Hello, everyone. Today, I would like to talk about just a personal favorite subject of mine. Now, for those who don't know, how the hell don't you? I adore giratina. I adore its look. I adore its design. I adore everything about it. However, there's something that's just been off-putting to me about giratina. Not his design, not his features or powers, not even most of his lore, because I can piece that together pretty quickly. It's just his how. And no, when I say how is Giratina, I'm not talking about how does he exist or how he was made. I'm asking simply how is the fella? Like, how is his personality? How does he feel? And today I would like to express my personal theory as to how Giratina is feeling and why Giratina has done the things he has done in the past. But first we must go back to the very beginning, or at least the beginning of this theory. What we know about Giratina. Giratina's typing is Dragon Ghost. Dragon because, well, the big three gods have to be dragons for some reason. But Ghost is kind of interesting. You see, in the Pokédex, and, well, not exactly the Pokédex, but in Sinnoh lore, Giratina is described as a dark god of disruption and antimatter. So you'd think his typing should be Ghost Dark. That'd make much more sense. And if you think about it, it really does make more sense than Ghost Dragon. But then if you think about it in another light, it's kind of poetic in a weird way. You see, Ghost isn't exactly an evil typing. I mean, yes, there are some malevolent spirits, but if you think about it at its very core, Ghost is a very lonely and solitary typing. Think about it. A ghost is when a soul passes to the afterlife, when it leaves everyone it loves and knows, and essentially becomes alone forever. When it loses its memories of everything it had in its human or past life, and then just becomes a wandering spirit. Ghost is often a very sad and dark typing, and not dark as in like evil, but dark as in just gloomy. Ghost is a very gloomy and sad typing simply because of what it means. That means this Pokemon has died or is dead, or will die, or is dying. But now you might be thinking, well, that doesn't make any sense. Giratina isn't dying. No. But then you think about another thing. Ghost is a very lonely typing. Most ghosts, at least from what I've seen of Pokemon, ghosts are tricky, or very trickster-like and mischievous. Not all because they're evil, of course. There are some ghosts that are like that. But mainly because they wish for interaction. They wish for attention and love. And I think this core aspect of the ghost Pokemon comes from the Lord of the Ghost Pokemon, which is obviously Giratina. Now we get into the meat and potatoes of this theory. Now we get into the meat and potatoes of this theory. Now we get into the meat and potatoes of this theory. Now we get into the meat and potatoes of this theory. Now we get into the meat and potatoes of this theory. Now we get into the meat and potatoes of this theory. Now we get into the meat and potatoes of this theory. Now we get into the meat and potatoes of this theory. Now we get into the meat and potatoes of this theory. Now we get into the meat and potatoes of this theory. Now we get into the meat and potatoes of this theory. Now we get into the meat and potatoes of this theory. Now we get into the meat and potatoes of this theory. Now we get into the meat and potatoes of this theory. Now we get into the meat and potatoes of this theory. Now we get into the meat and potatoes of this theory. Now we get into the meat and potatoes of this theory. Now we get into the meat and potatoes of this theory. Now we get into the meat and potatoes of this theory. Now we get into the meat and potatoes of this theory. Now we get into the meat and potatoes of this theory. Now we get into the I believe that giratina is not some sort of all sort of all opposing evil, nor is he some fierce and untamable beast. Quite the opposite, actually. He's had, from what I know, about 5 different wielders or masters. One of them, of course, being Don, another being Akari or Ray from the Sinnoh, another master being Volo, and then I cannot remember if Cynthia or, and aside from the Pokemon spin-off game in Pokemon Masters, or Cyrus ever used Giratina. I think Cyrus did at one point, but I'm not so sure. But basically, and I'm also certain that he has had at least 2 more unnamed or at least unknown users. As well, allow me to explain. From what do we know about Giratina? He is Ghost and Dragon. Ghost is a very sad and lonely typing, and Dragon is a very epic, upbeat, legendary typing. Now, what if we took this Ghost idea and just ran with it? Ghost being a very lonely, sad typing, and that trait of and the trait of hungering for affection that most and a lot of Ghost Pokemon seem to have comes from Giratina. If we trace that back to Giratina himself, well, what does that tell us? It tells us that Giratina is very lonely. And I think I know why, but in order for us to explain that, we need to go back to... Hold on. Sorry about that. Now we get back to the theory. So let us go back to the very beginning. Not to the beginning of this theory, but to the beginning of Pokemon. Arceus is a very benevolent deity, seen as the creator of all things and such, and as such it should have this wise and mysterious and whimsical personality. And it is known that Arceus has 3 kids. Whether they're sons or daughters, we don't know. But I prefer to think that Giratina is a boy. Not simply because men are the manliest man ever to exist, but because of another completely different perspective. But stick with me. I believe that Giratina is either the oldest or the youngest of the 3. And I believe that while creating him, his father Arceus did something different than the others. I don't know what. It's just, when I think of Giratina's counterparts, Dialga and Palkia, I don't see creatures. I see... How do I explain this? I see artifacts. I see relics. I see weapons that were used and controlled. I see personality-less creatures. And I see personality-less stone faces. You know why? Because I believe that Giratina is the first Pokemon, aside from Arceus, to have free will. Now stick with me here. It is a common theory that all legendaries, aside from Arceus, evolved from Mew. If we're thinking about that theory, then that could actually help with this one. If Giratina truly was once a Mew, then I believe that he still has those playful and childlike qualities. Uh, Stick with me here for a moment. I believe that Giratina is the only Pokemon, or at least the only of the legendaries, as in like the big three legendaries, who still has a sort of free spirit, not confined to merely one role like the others. Whereas Dialga and Palkia are simply just the Pokemon who created space and the Pokemon who created time. When I think of Giratina, I think of 1,000 different things. I think of theories. I think of concepts. I think of a character and a personality. I think of a character I can relate to. When I think of the other two, I just think of giant thing that basically just sits in a cave until someone comes to use its power. Yeah, no. But when I think of Giratina, like I said, I think of a whole character I can relate to. And allow me to explain why. Let's go to ancient Sinnoh. No, not history, before that. Back when the Sinnoh tribe ruled. It is now even in history, the Sinnoh are even called by Volo the ancient Sinnoh people, meaning they are years, and I mean years old. What do we know about back then? Aside from that's when all the myths were created, or at least dated back to, who at their earliest, it is also known, at least from what Legends Arceus has told us, that there was another time-space rift. Some space-time distortion rift. What does that tell us? That Volo had Giratina do this before? No, because technically this would be way before Giratina was ever born. I'm sorry, before Volo was ever born. So what exactly caused? So what exactly made Giratina do this? Well, this might be getting into tinfoil hat territory, but hear me out. I think that Giratina was being manipulated and did not know it. Think about it, in the ancient Sinnoh days, the Sinnoh people worshipped Arceus as some sort of primordial being, a deity to be worshipped and respected. Now the Diamond and Pearl clans each worshipped Dialga and Palkia, believing them to be the one true god. However, there was no one for Giratina, and I think that his appearance kind of is one of the reasons to that. Giratina is very angel of death looking. In his altered form, or the form he takes when he enters our world, he is a very opposing looking creature to a normal human. Very satanic, very dark looking, sometimes even malevolent or evil. But in my opinion, that couldn't be farther from the truth. As well, let me just piece together some things here. What do we know about the Sinnoh people? We only know of about 3, maybe a possible 4th or ascendant from them. These 3 descendants are Kagita, Cynthia, and Volo. Now, these 3 are heavily implied to be related to one another. Most likely Kagita is either Volo's mother or aunt or sister or wife. And or it's some sort of other way around. However, there is almost no denying that Cogita and Volo, although somewhere down the line, their DNA merged to create Cynthia. Now, let us think even before them. There was the Sinnoh people, who we know both of them are a part of. So, essentially think of a tribe of Cynthias. No, not the piano music. Turn that off. Think of a tribe of explorers, of archaeologists, of people who found wonder in the myths. Now, from what we do know, is that the Sinnoh people were either very benevolent people or very divided, each with different ideals and several groups with different ideals and different thoughts on how everything worked. My idea is that one of these groups, or one of these people, perhaps an ancient Sinnoh king, or just a ancient Sinnoh general or leader, or someone who held intense power. However, my belief is that one of those people discovered Giratina, or encountered Giratina. Now, or came to Giratina as, well, we can clearly see that Giratina once had a statue in ancient Sinnoh. Of course, it was destroyed, and the reason why might be because Giratina was hated by the Sinnoh people. Now, like I said, this game tinfoil hat territory, so But what if Giratina was hated not because of his power, not because of what he could do, because of what he looked like and what they thought he seemed to represent? As Giratina is known for his looks, his demeanor, his power, what if the ancient Sinnoh people believed that from his looks alone, he was evil, and he was some sort of entity that exists simply to be the counterbalance to all of existence itself? What if it's something much more simple than that? Like, say, gravity, which is my personal belief as to what Giratina is the Pokemon of. Now, let us get to the... Now, this is going even further into the meat and potatoes of this theory. Pokemon as a whole, like from starters, most Pokemon are very, how do I explain this? Encounter oriented. They are, they're basically things that require amounts of love and care. Admiration, to be exact. Pokemon, at least from what I know, come into the world needing love, wanting love. What if Giratina was just like that? Like I said, as a Mew. If he was a Mew, and he kept those qualities. Giratina is essentially a lonely ghost type, a lonely ghost dragon type who wants love, wants care, wants adoration, but not for what you think. Not to be equal with his father and brothers, and father and siblings in terms of followers, not for a cult, nothing like that. In my opinion, Giratina is possibly the most innocent and downright sad of the legendaries. Allow me to explain. I believe that Giratina is essentially an autistic child. And that is why I say boy, and I call him a male, because when I think of Giratina, from what I know of, I think of him as a scared, lonely little boy who will do anything for friends. And I think that is what ends up getting him manipulated, getting the distortion rifts if it's open. What if Giratina is just living his best life, or at least trying to? And then these people from Ancient Sinnoh, like the person who made him open the first space-time rift, and Volo, what if they came into what they came into Giratina's life with and gave him promises of adoration, of love, not from large quantities of people, but simply from themselves? What if it's sort of like, okay, you ever encounter a child who will do anything for friends or for people who like him? Essentially, I think of Giratina like that. A scared little boy who, in my opinion, just wants to be loved, just wants to be cared for. And he can't get that from the Sinnoh people because they despise him, they hate him, they think he's a devil, they think he's a monster, an evil god of chaos and antimatter. What if Giratina was manipulated with promises of friendship and love by his former trainers? And by 2 or maybe even 3 of his former trainers. The first time, he fell for it completely. Opened the space-time rift, got beaten by the hero, and his trainer got defeated by the hero. He turned tail because, he's a child. He doesn't know what to do in an actual fight. At least he didn't. Years later, Volo seeks out Giratina, believing him to be an ancient evil that hates Arceus with a burning passion. So he feeds Giratina and gives him enough and pours in his patience, time, effort, and care into making Giratina stronger so he can defeat Arceus. Now, what if Giratina didn't think of this as Volo just using him? What if he were trying to make him stronger? What if he thought of this as Volo actually caring for him? Actually enjoying his company? Well, it would mean a few things, such as Giratina is a naive child, a special ed child, like a autistic introvert, but a child nonetheless. What if, instead of being sealed away in the distortion world, he simply just lives there because he likes it in there? What if Arceus didn't hate Giratina per se, but it was the people who hated him? It was the people who made the myths about him being evil just based off of his appearance. What if he was manipulated and used 3 too many times by past trainers, but once his evil masters were defeated, he saw the love and compassion that his newer masters would have for their other Pokemon, like Akari and Ray, or Dawn and Sun, or the ancient hero who defeated his first master. Because I'm pretty sure the ancient hero is the person who closed up the first rift and defeated the person who made him open that rift in the first place. What if the reason why Arceus quote-unquote sealed away Giratina wasn't so he wouldn't destroy everything, but so no one else could take advantage of him? So no one else could use and abuse him. What if Giratina, after being in his lonely distortion world for years, ever since Ray or Akari's death, what if he was summoned and the rift to the distortion world was opened by Cyrus, and he had enough? He dragged Cyrus into the distortion world to give him a piece of his mind, to show that he would not be used and abused any longer by quote-unquote loving masters. And that is why I personally think he lets you Master Ball him. Because if you think of it like this, see, from what I have, at least from what I and the majority of people I've seen on YouTube and talked to have seen, in Pokemon Arceus, he kind of just sits there until you Ultra Ball him. And then he just sits in the Ultra Ball. As from what I and many other people have witnessed, it is usually a one and done capture. He doesn't try busting out of the ball, as instead, he stays in there. Maybe the reason he stays in there is because he thinks that you will be a better fit for him. You will be a person who will actually show him love and compassion. What if the reason why he lets you Master Ball him in Platinum is because he sensed that very same feeling that Ray and Akari gave him after you defeated Cyrus? What if the reason why he let you Master Ball him, because let's be serious, he is definitely stronger than freaking Necrozma at his full power, and Necrozma can easily say, hey, no to your Pokeballs. So why can't Giratina? Well, I personally think that Giratina can, but he chose not to. As when it comes to to Volo did not Master Ball or even have a ball for Giratina. He was kind of just there, like a pet you could summon. What if Giratina, the reason why Giratina lets you catch him is because he wants to be loved and cared for, and not used and abused and controlled by evil masters who only want to use him for their benefit. Thank you for your time.